Welcome back to the Giants, guys. Very special guest this week, Paul Dottino. He's been covering the Giants since 1983. Longer than most of you have been alive. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. Follow the Giants guys on Twitter.
Burnout. Woo! Guess what, people? I'm back. Yup. And I am with some new guys. So we've got like an extension of the Giants guys today. So thanks for listening to another episode. You know me, Craig Santucci, as your host and the owner and operator of NYGiantsRush.com. Of course, I got Michael Stewart, the truth, our resident golfer, and Spiro, which is, of course, Mr. Glass Half Full. But the reason why you guys tune in every week, because I'm always bringing you somebody who knows more about the Giants than we do. And, of course, welcome Paul Dottino to the show. How are you, Paul?
Good to be with you, fellas. I don't know about that golfing situation. The weather hasn't cooperated with you too good, Michael.
No.
Well, I mean, for a guy in the Carolinas, he gets away with hitting that little round ball a lot more than we do.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. So, Paul, you're hanging out here with the Giants guys, and like I said, I'm older than Spiro anyway. Michael, I'm not going to give you the, I'm not going to let your youth out, but I'm familiar with your work for a long time. You've been around the Giants for almost 37, 38 years. I mean, like you're a Fordham guy. I mean, you're as New York as it comes. So my question is, you've seen a lot go in and out of East Rutherford. What's your thoughts on Judge? Because the fans just seem to have, they took to him right away because he kind of reminds them of a little bit of Coughlin. We know the Belichick connection, the Saban connection. Like, what's he like? What's he like? What do you think of him?
Well, Craig, I think for starters, I started covering the Giants in 1983, which was Bill Parcells' rookie season as a head coach. Yeah. I remember telling my dad that year, give this guy probably 3 years and the Giants are going to be legit playoff team. As it turned out, they were a playoff team in 2.
Yeah.
Parcells did it a lot quicker than I even thought he would do. But I could see the genius that he was then. And, having been taught not only my craft, but about pro football by George Young and Tom Boyster and Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick and Ron Earhart and all the guys on that staff. I mean, I cut my teeth there. So I guess I show my age a lot. I mean, I'm entering my 39th season now of Giants football. Amazing. But I think it does allow me to put things into perspective because I've got a tremendous amount of experience. I've seen the best of the best. I've seen the worst of the worst. Hey, guys, they were 3-12-1 that first year that I covered the team. They had like 27 guys on the injured reserve list, and it was a total wreck.
Wow.
I mean, that was about as bad as it got.
I'm sure you're having a little deja vu right now.
But I tell you what, by being so long a Giants reporter, I'm also a Giants historian. I consider myself a Giants historian because I know as much as I know as I could know about this franchise from the late 50s on. I've studied those teams. I mean, I got to become really good friends with Wellington Mara before he passed away. So I used to ask him all the time about those teams. So I know a great deal about the history of this team going back to the late 50s. I don't go back further than that, but I consider myself a Giants historian in the modern era. So that's the perspective that I give you when I tell you that Joe Judge brings an awful lot of Tom Coughlin and of Bill Parcells to this job. Dave Gettleman does also bring a certain amount of George Young to this job.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why I am sold that this combination is the one moving forward that will restore the Giants to being a postseason team. I believe that. I also believe that from the very get-go that Gettleman, in my opinion, he never said it this way, had a 3-phase plan to get the Giants back into the playoffs.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, phase 1 was rip down all the old paint. All right, scrape it down, use the turpentine, rip down the bad stuff that was there.
Sure.
Number 2, Now you got to start. Okay, we get from ripping the whole thing down to start getting things in line, starting to lay some of the foundation, starting to pour some of the concrete, get things going. Then number 3, you start building the skeleton of the actual house. Okay.
Yep.
And that's where you start sniffing the playoffs. Well, unfortunately for the Giants, it's taken one more year than I thought it would. And part of the reason was that the build down and then the pouring of the foundation kind of went sour because of the coaching staffs.
Okay.
McAdoo coaching staff and the Shermer coaching staff, not to mention, obviously, the injury to Barkley, which was huge.
Yep.
Okay.
And let's not forget the whole COVID and no preseason.
No doubt. No doubt. The premature benching of Eli Manning. Okay. Which is what I call it.
That's a great point.
Okay. Those things, well, they inserted a rookie into the lineup earlier than he ever should have been. He should have been sitting for the whole year. He should have had a redshirt season.
We talk about that frequently on the show and on the website. Like, they could have gave him the week 6, 7, 8, and just given him a little bit more time to mature. That was a baptism under fire, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and so those are the 2 primary reasons. And then obviously, let's not kid ourselves. 3 years ago, that first draft, Gettleman was not as successful as he's been the last 2.
Sure.
So you put those things all together, and it delayed the 3-phase plan to come to fruition by a year.
Yeah.
So now, instead of being what I consider a legit playoff contender in year 3, it's now going to happen in year 4. And what I say, fellas, I don't know how often you listen to Big Blue Kickoff Live, the show that I'm a part of on the Giants channel. What I tell people is one of the things that I do every year. At the end of the season, I look at the depth chart, I look at the roster, and I say, okay, how many important snap players is this roster away from being a legit playoff contender?
Okay.
And there have been years in the last 10 years, several years, where I thought they were 9 or 10 players away.
Okay.
That's how far away I thought they were.
I was going to say that's pretty far away.
Yeah.
Now, I think they're 4.
All right.
They need 4 new faces in the draft and free agency who can give them significant productive snaps in order to be a team in the playoff conversation.
Do we play with that scenario, or do we say wide receiver, cornerback,
edge?
Edge rusher. Who's are we close here?
Yeah, well, I would think when you look at the positions, there's no question about it. The cover corner number 2, a dominant edge rusher, a
wide receiver.
Let's say a playmaker on offense.
Impact skill position guy.
Right.
That buys you.
Have to be a wide receiver.
True.
Okay?
Very true.
Yeah.
It can be Kyle Pitts.
It can
He
be.
likes Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
I'm big on Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. I really like his game.
Yeah, so do I very much. And I would say that 4th player, it could be anywhere that 4th guy contributes.
Sure.
But those are the key players. It could very simply be a 3rd down back, to be honest.
Okay.
Because I don't think Barkley is going to come back and immediately get 300 touches coming off of significant knee surgery.
No, we don't know.
Nobody wants that.
How long it's going to take him to get up speed.
Right.
Me and Spear, we've had this conversation a couple times that, everybody's different. He may bounce right back like Adrian Peterson, or he may not be ready to go until week 4. You're never going to know. So that number 2 really becomes a number 2 and a number 3 that can contribute. While the Giants tried this year, it was Freeman, it was Morris. I mean, Gallman did step up. We don't know if Gallman's going to return. We'd all like him back.
Right.
But, you're 100% right. It could be a 3rd down back to take some of that pressure off of Barkley.
Could be that, or quite frankly, okay, I'm not against. People talk about the receiver position. I think the Giants need 2 significant targets to add in the passing game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would like to see one skyscraper, and that's why I say it doesn't have to be a receiver, because I'd be happy with Pitts.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
He can go up and get it.
Add Pitts or add a 6'4" receiver. You
Right.
know, I would be very happy to get another Plexico Burris. Trust me.
Oh, but
But gee, I wonder who
Michael, how long have we been saying, like, you could give me a lot of speed, but if you give me a 6'4" guy, how
Who can
long
catch
have you
it?
been saying
Fellas.
that now?
Look, the last guy who played big was Akeem Nicks.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Nicks was he was a shade
6
under
foot.
6'2",
Yeah.
but he
Hands,
had
though.
incredible length and the biggest hands you could find anywhere.
Yeah.
And because he had those traits, he played like a guy who was 6'4".
Yeah. Agreed.
The Giants haven't had one of those real guys. They thought they had one in Reuben Randall, but he couldn't remember the right routes.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Okay.
Ruben.
So that kind of flamed out. And they thought they may have had one in Ramses Barden, but he couldn't beat any press coverage or man-to-man
No.
coverage.
No, he didn't have
The
that
great
burst.
Ramses Barden, man. He had some great training camps, though.
Right. So they haven't had one of those really since Knicks.
Yeah.
And I've been begging for one. So they need one of those guys. And I could see Pitts in a double tight end set will serve that function perfectly well. They could play him and Ingram like when
Oh.
Hernandez and Gronk played with the Patriots.
Okay, wait. So you're opening up a huge can.
Yeah, a couple
here.
questions there.
Yeah. You're like, because this is one. So these guys, they can tell you, like, I don't talk bad about players, but there are players that just disappoint me when they have such amazing talent. And I want to like Evan Ingram. He's probably a great guy, but
He
just,
is.
you know, but the contributions he's making or lack of making hurts the team. And you know, guys like us, we calculate everything, Paul. Like, we're looking at every edge. I mean, he led the league in drop passes. Those 11 balls turned into 35 points. Those 35 points are the difference between winning and losing. So my question to you is, yes, I love the Hernandez Gronk thing. If it turns out, but we only got 6 picks. So my question to you, no one knows better than you, is Ingram gonna come back, in your opinion? Is he worth trading to get another pick, right? Michael Stewart, we only have 6 picks, right?
Yep.
That's it.
So like, is he worth trading? Like, I don't know if those are things that you want to cover, but like, when I think of Pitts and Ingram together, it's a lot of speed. It's a lot of height.
And who's
You know,
blocking? Who's blocking in that scenario?
That's what I was going to say. But do we need a little bit, like, now I got to put Caden Smith on the field to block. Now I got 3 tight ends. So how does it fit if Ingram stays?
All right. There are a lot of questions here that you threw at me at once. Let me just go back up 1 second and tell you
Sure.
that
My bad.
if I use Pitts as the tall skyscraper in my offense, I'd have no problem then taking a short lightning bug receiver later on in the draft, or even if I can get one on the cheap in free agency to add depth to the receiver position, because I do think they could use a lightning bug as well.
Yeah, somebody that can stretch the field.
Okay? For all I know, maybe Dante Pettis winds up being that guy if they don't get one.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did
Who knows?
flash. Yeah, he flashed a little bit.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I really want to see it big. Okay.
Yes.
Now, having said that, let's address the tight end situation. First of all, Pitts is a much better blocker than people talk about because they're so enamored with his pass catching skills. They seem to ignore and forget the fact that he's actually a pretty damn good blocker.
Okay.
I wouldn't say he is super at blocking,
Yeah,
but he's
not
better than
Shockey.
average.
He's not Shockey. He's not Bavaro.
No. Now he could. Let me tell you something. Bavaro was awesome. Howard Cross, best blocking tight end I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Bavaro was terrific, but he wasn't as good as Cross. And Shockey, he had more of an issue where he didn't like to do it. It wasn't that he wasn't good at it. He was good at it. He just didn't like to do it, and he grumbled about it. But he was good.
He wanted to go out and catch passes.
Yeah. Now, I think that Pitts could be a Shockey type receiver and blocker. Okay. I think he'd be a Shockey type player. And here's what you do. if you have a double tight end set, you can now do so many things because you can put each guy in the slot opposite each other, which is a true matchup nightmare for the defense.
Especially if you
could
got
put
small
one
corners.
guy in line. You could put both guys in line. You could put both guys on the same side. You could line up one as an H-back. You could put one in motion. The numbers of things that you could do with the two tight end set is incredible. This is why Hernandez and Gronk did it so well in New England. Now, if you want to run the ball, it's not a problem because the Giants' offensive line has gotten better. I know some people out there in the analytics community don't believe it, but they have.
Agreed.
We're all on board with that. We've broken down a lot of tape. I'm a season ticket holder. I get the all 22 for free as a season ticket holder.
Right.
I watch it all the time. I don't want to blame Colombo, but what Googs did a really good job of kind of calming them down, getting them back to basics. Lemieux got some, started rotating snaps. Gates turns out that kid's an animal at center. He looks great.
He's all right.
Yeah. So
Thomas really came on the end of the year. He was terrific.
One question about but the guards.
Right.
Will Hernandez. Oh, sorry.
I think Zeidler still has tread on his tire.
Oh yeah,
He's
I guess you're right.
Player.
Yeah,
he's still a good player. All right, and I'm not giving up on Hernandez yet. And Lemieux, for the deficiencies that he had in pass pro, I thought he did enough to get that running game going with Goldman behind him.
Okay.
If Barkley doesn't get hurt last year, the Giants win at least 2 more games.
I agree.
Maybe 3.
Yep.
Well, we've even I think it was Michael Stewart. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they not lose 3 games by a total of 6 points?
Yeah, they had a lot of close games they lost. A lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, well, and we could also talk about some of the 12th men on the field too, but we won't get into that
Dallas game.
Right? But anyway, let's go back to the point at hand.
Yeah.
I'm going to play offensive coordinator now.
Okay.
And I'm going to put on the field Slayton and Shepard wide. I'm going to put Ingram out there, and I'm going to put Pitts out there, and I'm going to put Barkley as the lone back in the backfield. You're a defensive coordinator. I invite any one of you guys to tell me, A, what's your personnel on the field, and B, what scheme are you going to run against me?
Yeah,
you got to be nickel, man.
There's a lot of speed there.
But yeah, it's tough.
And you're going to have a lot of mismatches with linebackers that can't cover Ingram and Pitts. That's going to be a problem. You're going to have some tall safeties over top. If you look at it from that point of view, with 2 tight ends that can line up inside or outside, it's going to be a real hard matchup.
Yeah, you got to go nickel, but they can run all over that defense.
There you go, my friend. And that's my point.
Yeah,
that's my point. If they want to go to a sub package, right, and they want to go quarters coverage and bring in not only an extra corner but an extra safety, well, now I'm going to pound the living hell out of them.
Yeah.
Right? I'll just tell Pitts to come and block down, and I'll run it right to that side. Yeah. Or I'll wind up putting him or Ingram in motion, put the 2 tight ends next to each other, and have them seal the edge. Yep. And then Barkley's going to run for 15 yards.
Yeah.
Now all we need is the first 10 teams in front of us to fall asleep on Pitts.
Yeah, right. So see, to me, I think that type of personnel deployment allows you to exploit the passing game if you want it, and it also allows you to win a favorable matchup if you want to run the ball.
Okay.
Pitts is a weapon, just like Barkley's a weapon. Don't pigeonhole him into one position on the field.
Yeah, I've seen some video and some tape on him that says he's more than a capable blocker.
No question.
The NFL is going to put 10 pounds on the kid, and he's going to play at 250, 255.
A lot of people are saying he's like a wide receiver 3 in this class. He could be one of the top wide receivers if you put him out in that position. He's a top tight end, so he's a hybrid, and Judge loves him hybrid people. So players.
What's the odds of him being there now after we praised him so much?
That's the key.
Well, the big thing is that for the most part, you don't see tight ends taken in the top 10. That's a very rare instance in this league.
14.
He's a rare player though, right?
He is. but there's a phobia, in the NFL because there are those teams that will shy away from running backs because they are worried about the injury.
Yeah.
There are other guys who will say, well, I can't take a tight end there because he'll never be that important to my offense. There are other guys who will say, I can't take a safety there because how dare you take a safety? He's playing a lot of
Positional
zone,
value.
right? And there's no value. You
Yeah.
get all these people who get caught up in that positional value stuff. And what they forget is that if you are team A, okay, and you've got a coaching staff that can deploy that guy in such a way that you can create nightmares for the other team,
Yeah.
guess what? It's a good pick.
Yeah. You have to want to use him. If you're that coaching staff, if you're gonna take him, you have to use him in that way. Like you have to get him the ball, move him around, and have a dynamic offense to be able to, spread the field a little bit. It makes sense if you're that right offense.
Yeah, so that's my feeling is the Giants absolutely got to get an impact offensive player, and it seems to me we all know that there are 4 guys there. There are the 3 receivers. I like Chase number 1.
Yeah.
In terms of the receivers, I would go Waddle number 2. I would go Smith number 3. But ahead of all of them, I would put Pitts, and that would be my preference at 11.
That's
now
a
you
hot
ask me,
take
is
right
Pitts
there.
going to be there?
Yeah.
Well, how many quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10?
Hopefully 5.
These crazy teams are going to overdraft these quarterbacks. At least 3 are going.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think 3 are going.
All
I
right.
agree. I think we all
could
agree to
see
3.
4. I could see 4. I
Lance
think 3 for
could
sure.
go. Lance
Who
could go.
do you
but I
see
think
as the 4th one?
Lance?
Yeah, I think that somebody is going to take a shot at Lance, and I'm not sure how high it's going to be. Now, I like Lance, but to me, he's a 3rd-round value.
Yeah, I agree. That's shocking that someone's going to roll the dice on Lance.
But every year, we just had on Eric from Yahoo Sports, the NFL analyst for Yahoo.
Yep.
He was just on our Big Blue Kickoff Live show, and he was the first national guy who flat out agreed with me that Lawrence is the only 1st-round value quarterback in this class. He really is. He's the only one. He should be number 1. After that, none of these quarterbacks really are concrete 1st-round values.
Yeah,
They're
let
just
alone
not.
top 10. Yeah.
But here's the problem. Everybody has this, like we talked about, phobias of picking certain positions.
Sure.
Well, there's a magnet attached to every quarterback who comes out. It's like they gotta elevate them and shoot them up.
Yeah, which is good for the Giants.
And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But teams are so desperate. So how many of those guys go? Do 4 go? Do 5 go? That helps the Giants' chances.
Yeah.
But I would say this, fellas. Honestly, I think at 11, if they don't get one of the 4 impact offensive skill position guys, to me, they certainly are going to be in a position to get value and need at corner.
Yeah.
Okay. That would not be a problem for me if they took one there. And you
like
could probably also argue that they could take an offensive lineman there too. If they really felt so compelled that if they really thought that there was a stud there, they could probably do it. And I wouldn't cry about it.
Yep. I would be disappointed because I know that, Jones needs some weapons. We need to stretch the field. We need to score. I mean, at the end of the day, and I'm sure both of you 2 guys will agree with me, at the end of the day, the New York Giants just don't score enough points.
Correct.
So, so if they went with what's his name? Sewell?
Sewell. Yeah, Sewell.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Slater,
angry.
He won't be
Slater,
there. He won't
Sewell.
be there.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that one of those 2 guys could be there at 11.
Slater. I think Slater.
Slater,
yeah.
yeah.
And you know what? If they took him, I couldn't rip it because if you've got a guy who you honestly believe is going to be a stud for the next decade on your offensive line, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Yeah, if he's the next Quentin Nelson, sign me up.
Well, he can play guard
I'm with you.
He can play guard or tackle too. So
exactly, he can.
That helps. Yep.
He can.
Cole, what's your take on Parsons?
Well, see, I do have a problem here with the defensive issue because I told you about the corners a second ago. That'd be Farley or Sertan, right? I know
Yep.
Horn is getting also some ink too as potentially moving up. I think the defensive players in this draft high are boom or bust guys. I honestly have issues with them. I think Parsons, to me, is the only top 10 concrete top 10 talent
Right.
amongst the defensive players in this draft.
Sure.
The problem with Parsons, I believe he's best suited in the NFL as a middle linebacker in a 4-3 or an inside backer in a 3-4. So I would ask you this. If the Giants took him at 11, you probably are going to say, well, now he's got to play next to Martinez. Does that really enhance your ball club as much as taking somebody like Kyle Pitts if he's there?
Correct. Yeah. You're not, it's where's the upside? You get a couple
Yeah,
more
you know,
tackles.
He's a pass rusher, and he could run. He could cover. So
I think he can move all over the place. No, you
Yeah.
don't think he can line up on the outside?
You like him
once in a
on the
while?
edge of the 3-4. You do.
No, once in a while, like move him around. Like move
Graham
him around
is
in
a master
packages.
at a chess piece like that, moving him all around. So I would be interested to see what Graham could do with him. And you got the Spencer coach.
That would be my
Penn
two
State.
picks right there. I could tell you
Yeah.
that. Pitts on offense, Parsons on defense.
Yeah,
That
well,
would be my two.
Parsons to me is the best value in terms of just pure talent
Mhm.
in the top 10. But again, I don't think they could necessarily go wrong with a cover corner there either.
Right.
Because that does fit the need a little bit more than an inside linebacker. Because I do think Parsons
That's
is
true.
an inside guy. I happen to be a little higher, I suppose, on Carter Coughlin, Tay Crowder, O'Shane Zimenez, Lorenzo Carter.
Yep.
To me, I still think that those guys can give them something.
Well, let's talk. Let's that's a great point you just brought up. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. The Giants defense went from 30th to 9th. We do this show every week. We write all week long. We cover the Giants the best we can. Like I've seen some great defenses. I've been going to the game. I've had season tickets since 1968. Okay, outside this COVID season, I have missed 6 games since 1984. All right, so I mean, I've seen some fantastic linebackers. I've seen some great defenses, and as well as these guys have. The 800-pound gorilla in the room, which has got Giants Twitter land ripped in half, is the Leonard. Yeah, it's the Leonard Williams thing. For me, I don't know what to do because you're at the 9th ranked defense. Like, I know money, but it's not my money. So I'm like, pay him whatever he wants. It ain't broke. Don't fix it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
my question to you is like, where does this value sit? Because to me, I don't want the defense to change. You can't. Giants fans are so funny. They're bitching to complain about Leonard Williams being traded and he better perform. Now he's performed and he's earned his payday. They're like, we don't need him. Get rid of him. He's too
Right.
much. So like they're very finicky that way. Like I don't see how you maintain the 9th ranked defense if you're missing the big cat. You know, like whether he rushes the inside, outside, double teams, causes fumble. He's got a great first step. I just really like his game, and I think Graham and Spiro, you and I have talked about it a couple times. Graham has that ability to turn guys on, like he did with Martinez when he was in Green Bay at first time.
Yeah.
Graham has this knack of turning guys on. What's your take on Leonard Williams? Because I'm going to be upset if he goes.
Well, let's just say that Coach Spence, also Captain Chaos, deserves a lot of credit. The defensive line coach coming over from Penn State, he deserves a lot of credit for this defensive line meshing like they did this past season. And during this past offseason, Leonard sought out Richard Seymour, the former All-Pro defensive lineman.
I didn't know that.
Who used to play with the Patriots.
Sure.
And he trained all last offseason with Seymour, who, by the way, was a similar kind of player. Played defensive end, played defensive tackle, played in a 3-4, played in a 4-3.
Yeah.
He was a perfect role model for Leonard Williams to latch onto and to use as a mentor. And between Seymour, between Spence and between Graham, you now see the results.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that Leonard Williams will be back, has to be back. And I think what you have here is you have a polarized, because primarily of the mass media in this town, you have a polarized fan base that will not look at the facts. They simply want to be either pro-Judge and Gettleman or anti-Gettleman.
Yep.
I don't know if they're so anti-Judge. I don't think anybody necessarily is on Judge right now.
Agreed.
But there's clearly a pro-Gettleman and an anti-Gettleman sentiment. And if you're anti, you will not recognize any of the facts or any of the things that he has done well to help start the rebuild.
Oh.
If you are pro-Gettleman, you recognize all of those things and you say, all right, look at the guy's resume, all the championship franchises he's been a part of over his career.
Yep.
You say, okay, it took a little bit more patience than it should have because of, again, the things we mentioned at the top of the show.
Yep.
And you say, okay, all of this stuff is understandable. He deserves another year to see if the plan works. Now, if it doesn't work after this year and they're still spinning their wheels and they don't show the appropriate progress, now you have a reason to legitimately question and say, okay, wait a minute now. You know, you've had that extra time to kind of let this thing grow a little bit and we're not seeing anything. I think the question is a little more legitimate after this season if you don't see some results. But to crucify him at this point, I just think it's foolish. It's because people are just full of hate. They want to be anti, they want to be negative, and the mass media is just feeding into this. They just love to bash.
We live with it every day, you know, and like these guys will tell you, like, I keep reminding people, I'm like, you're talking about a guy that had his hands or his fingerprints on Antrell Roll and Plaxico Barris and Kavika Mitchell when he was in that role. And
how about Antonio Pierce?
And Antonio Pierce, like he's got his fingerprints all over these guys. Player personnel was his gig, right?
Yep.
And now and now I look at Bradbury,
Kareem
McKenzie, sure. Like, but even now they're like, oh, this guy. They want to bring up Omame and Stewart,
right?
And Curtis Riley, and I'm like, whoa, slow your roll. Let's talk about Logan Ryan and Bradbury and the trade for Yadam and Martinez. Yeah, drafting Dexter Lawrence.
McKinney.
Well, I got a better one for you, Craig. How about Graham Gano?
Oh yeah, look at that!
Awesome.
Boom.
Yeah.
Guy might have been the best kicker in the National Football League.
Yeah, he was, without a doubt.
And then we locked him up. So he locked him up for another 3 years. So we're good to go.
Not to mention, obviously Jones, Barkley, Andrew Thomas. I mean, if you put it on a scale, his positives far outweigh his negatives in terms of the guys that he has brought in here. Did he have some misses in free agency? Yes. But early on, a lot of that had to do with, if you know anything about what happened here, he was also trying to get guys in free agency who were fitting the coaching staff.
Okay, fair enough.
And the coaching staff, I think we would all agree, underachieved.
Yeah.
The McAdoo and the Shermer coaching staffs, they underachieved. Okay? For whatever reason, we don't have to get into that. Yeah. They underachieved. And there were pieces that were brought in part, to fit what they were trying to do.
That is such a great point on, you're trying to fit players into a system and what Shermer and McAdoo are known for. And if the staff doesn't work out, the players aren't going to work out.
They didn't develop the players either. They didn't develop those players.
Well, I mean, I'll give you a great example, right? We know how they brought in like a bunch of former Cardinals, like Kareem Martin.
Yeah.
Oh, how'd that work out? Now, where do you think the push came from to get a guy like that on the team?
Betcher.
Yeah.
So, they signed William Gay, who couldn't even make it out of training camp because he had played with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And they talked about he knows the system.
But
you know,
Yeah.
you got to understand that, the GM, what he's trying to do is put together a roster that he knows his coaching staff is going to be able to utilize.
Sure.
So how hard is this to comprehend that some of the misfires that they did have early during the Gettleman regime also in part had to do with the staff?
Yeah.
How hard is that to comprehend?
It's not hard to comprehend. I guess not enough people were saying it.
Yeah.
Because Paul, your words matter. And that's because, like I said, we chew this up. We cover a lot of Giant stuff, you know, and we're, at least I am. I'm pretty sure you guys are.
Well,
I've got 5 guys that write for me. We rotate the
fellas,
guys. We're all pro Gettleman.
well, let me say this to you. See, and this is why I love to throw things back in people's faces, because they're praising Gettleman for getting the guys that Judge and his staff want, right? They brought in Martinez. They brought in Fackrell. They brought in Logan Ryan. They brought in Bradbury, right? All these guys that are the Judge guys, that are Patrick Graham guys. So that's good, right? But we conveniently forget that the guys he brought in for the previous coaching staffs that didn't work out, we forget the fact that the staff and the coaches were working with those guys.
Right.
But how do you can't have it both ways?
No.
And is it so crazy that they could put a second good season together, being that the first one was good? Like, I don't understand why everybody's just assuming that it's going to go haywire. Like, the first one went well. You know, it could be a trend. The second one could go well as well. I don't understand why we keep going back to the Shermer staff, and we keep talking about that all the time.
It boggles the mind. And the other thing, fellas, that really I laugh about all the time, and I know I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but it's kind of important when you consider it goes back to the question you asked me about what do I think about the Judge and Gettleman regime.
Yeah.
And really, you know, when you look at this team, and you guys said you've been around for a long time, you've gone to the games, you've watched this team. Look, I understand that the Giants only won 6 games this past season, but you and I both know you have seen Giants teams in the past, including during the 70s, and even, you know, some other teams.
Yeah.
Even the Parcells first team that was 3-12-1.
There was some bad teams in the 90s.
And there's no comparison. There's no comparison. Did this honestly look like a 6-win team to you by the time the season was over?
No.
Definitely better.
And I don't know anybody talking about who won the most games in the NFC East. I don't care. I could care less on how the Giants could have almost swept the division. I mean, like, this team has consistently made progress with very limited resources on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, let's call it what it is.
You know, the only thing, and here, let's take something else into account. I'm sure you guys have talked about this. We know about the offseason and the COVID and everything that happened last year, right? All right. We all talked about on Big Blue Kickoff about how that was going to impact every team in the NFL, but the teams that had new coaching staffs were going to be impacted worse.
Sure.
Okay? Did you know that opening day this past season, the Giants had 27 new faces on their roster that they did not have the year before, which meant half of the team had been turned over and the coaching staff had been turned over.
Yep.
Okay. So I went on WFAN and I told Joe and Evan, I used to do spots with them every week.
Oh, of course.
I
listen to it all the time.
And I said, guys, let's going into the season. I said, remember something. The first 4 games are going to be like preseason games for these guys.
100%.
They're pseudo preseason games
Against very good teams.
Against top contenders. Yeah. So I said, so don't get caught up in looking at this Giants team in September and thinking that that's what they are. Now, I know Bill Parcells, one of my founding fathers, always said, you are what your record says you are. I understand that, Coach. Tuna, I love you wherever you are. But truthfully, this particular time was like no other time in our history.
Yeah.
All right? They didn't have the NFL when the 1919 flu was going on or whatever it was. Okay?
Yeah, we had Paul, we've gotten pretty friendly with Lawrence Tynes. And Tynes comes on the show like like once a month he'll come on.
Right.
And he constantly he's like, guys, he's like, always remember that not only is the roster changing, the coaching changes. He's like, but you have a first-time head coach. He's like he has to first figure out where I'm going to live, where my kids are going to go to school. Oh, and then I've got this roster. I have all new roster.
Yeah.
And how do I get from point A to point B? Do I get
this little pandemic that also happened?
Yeah, and then so he constantly is reminding us on it's not just a new job. This man has new everything.
Yeah.
Everything that's in front of him is the first time he's ever done it. So I appreciated him saying that.
Physically meet any of his players until August.
Crazy.
Wild.
Think about that.
Yep.
Okay, but why is nobody computing this into their equation when they dump on this team? I don't get this. It's like that's like going out into a hurricane without an umbrella. You're just not being smart. So here's the thing. So I tell Joe and Evan about this, and of course the Giants get off to a very rocky start, right? So after the 4th game of the season, Joe and Evan they got me on the program, and they're asking me now, all right, so what do you think? What do you think of the Giants? I said, well, fellas, I told you this was a pseudo preseason. Hey, so Evan says, all right, so what for you would be a successful season? Do the Giants have to win 3 games, 4 games, 5 games? What do they have to do? And I said, fellas, here's what I'm telling you. If the Giants are competitive, okay, in the 4th quarters of every game the rest of the way, and they wind up going 6-6, I will consider them a 500 team, which to me is a significant step forward from last year. I'm telling you, I think they'll be a 6-6 team the rest of the way. They'll go 6-10. People are going to cry about a 6-10 record, but I'm going to look at them as a 500 team.
Yep.
Lo and behold, it happened that way.
And how many games? I mean, we again.
We'll throw in the Jones injury.
Yeah, Spiro, we had a walk-off against the Eagles, right? Ingram makes that catch.
Ugh.
That's a 7th win right there.
I know.
Dallas, penalties in
Dallas.
Dallas.
We try to do a really good job of not killing players because we know how. I say all the time, it's the hardest job on the planet. There's only 1,800 guys that have this job. I get it. I completely get it. But if we're talking about paid professionals going from 6 games to 8 games, there were 2 games that definitely could have been won. It might have been the worst 8-8 team in the league, but it would have been a humongous improvement.
Yeah. And that's without your best offensive player in Barkley. And you lost Jones for essentially 4 games. He came back for the Arizona game too early, in my opinion. But like you saw him turn the corner that second half after the Tampa Bay game, and then he messes up his hamstring, and that sets him back a little more. But this team is not a 6-win. The way they played was not a 6-win type of team.
Well, that's the point. Okay. In reality, the quality of ball they played, they were a 500 team. And that is a significant jump from what they were the year before.